matinding kalaban ng COVID.
Ayokong makahawa.
At mahawa.
Pero kailangan ko na magtrabaho.
Kaya di ako magiging pabaya.
Di matigas ang aking ulo.
Iingatan ko ang aking sarili.
Para maingatan ang pamilya ko.
Ito ang ambag ko.
Ako.
Ikaw.
Lahat tayo.
Sama-sama nating
Mayaangat ang bayan.
Basta't sama-sama tayo.
Sa pag-ingat buhay.
Para sa ating hanap buhay.
Mas hugas iwas.
Magandang tanghali, Pilipinas. Naku po, talaga naman po tumataas ang bilang ng mga aktibong kaso ng COVID. Meron nang nai-report kahapon na 4,899 na mga bagong kaso ayon po sa March 14 case bulletin ng DOH. At bukas po, yung magiging case bulletin ng DOH, kasama na rin po ang inyong abang lingkod because as of 11:29 this morning, nakuha ko po ang resulta na positibo po ako para sa COVID. Now, ang mabuting balita naman po sa akin, lahat ng mga nagkaroon ng close contact sa akin po, yung aking mga dalawang huling test ay noong March 10, negatibo po tayo. No? Itong March 10 po, nag-test tayo dahil nga po sasama tayo kay Presidente sa Dumaguete, kinabukasan 11, so negative po tayo noong March 10. Pero itong test po na kung saan tayo nagpositibo, ito po ay kahapon lamang, para nga po sana ngayon, para sa pagpupulong kay Presidente mamaya, at dito po lumabas na tayo ay positibo. So yung mga nagkaroon po sa akin ng close contact, I ask you po for your indulgence, pero kinakailangan po kayong mag-quarantine, no? Kung kayo po ay nagkaroon ng close contact sa akin. Pero yung pinuntahan ko po sa Ilocos, gaya ng aking sinabi, negatibo naman po ako noong March 10. Okay. Lumabas po ang resulta, 11:29, nandito na po ako sa opisina, kaya tinutuloy ko na rin po ang press briefing. Nag-iisa po ako ngayon sa aking opisina, and that is why we are on Zoom. Now, since isa na ako doon sa tinamaan ng COVID, ang tanong po, ano ba ho talaga ang dahilan at bigla tayo nagtaas ng numero ng COVID? Well, unang-una po, no, meron po lumabas na report na kino-quote yung sinasabi ko na excellent tayo sa handling. Excellent naman po talaga tayo sa handling until this month of March kung saan sumipa ang mga kaso ng COVID. Ang tanong, ito ba ay dahil nagpapabaya ang taong bayan? Ako ba ho'y nagpabaya? Sa tingin ko, hindi naman, no? Dahil sumusunod po talaga tayo sa minimum health cost. Pero tignan po natin ang COVID-19 daily confirmed cases sa buong Pilipinas, no? Yung October 12 po, tignan po natin yung October 12 data. No? Ito pong March 14 data, nagpapakita na itong nakalipas ng linggo talaga ng Marso, dyan sumipa po talaga yung mga numero ng COVID. No? So, itong linggo lang naman po talaga siya sumipa. Pero kung titignan po natin yung datos ng October 12, and can I have the slide for October 12, please? Oo, makikita nyo naman po sa noong October 12, ito po yung matapos tayo magbukas ng ating ekonomiya, hindi naman po sumipa ang mga kaso. Can I have the slide for October 12, please? Wala October 14 yan March 14 to Pero kung titignan niyo po yung by October 12, no? Tignan niyo po yung October 12, no? So October 12, diyan po tayo nagbukas, no? Tapos kung makikita nyo doon sa Pasko na marami talagang nagkaroon ng pagtipon-tipon, makikita nyo rin po na hindi naman ganun talagang tumaas siya, no, nung Pasko. So ang conclusion, hindi naman po siguro dahil sa nagiging pabaya tayo. No? Hindi ko rin masasabi na ito po ay dahil sa mga bagong variant dahil hindi naman po ako dalubhasa. No? Pero ang hindi natin makakaila, talagang lahat na po ng mga variants ay na-discover na dito sa Pilipinas. Ito po yung gusto kong tignan ninyo. No? Yung October 12 decision na kung saan tayo nagbukas sa ekonomiya, mababa naman po yung mga kaso ng COVID. At kung titignan nyo rin yung mga kaso matapos ang Pasko, mababa rin po ang mga kaso. hindi po ako po pwede mag-conclude dahil ako po hindi dalubhasa, siguro naman po meron talaga ibang dahilan kung bakit sumisipa po at hindi po ito bumubura nung ating mga nagawa sa mga nakalipas na taon na talaga naman pong tumaas ang kaso at napababa po natin yan. So anyway, nasa 560,512 naman po ang gumaling, samantalang 12,829 po ang namatay or 2.06 case fatality rate. Nakikiramay po kami sa mga naging biktima. Ang tanong, puno na buho ang ating mga ospital. Tignan po natin ang infographics. No? Ulitin ko po, yung desisyon ng IATF kung mananatili sa kaparehong quarantine classification ay nakabase po sa mga aktibong kaso at tinitingnan din natin kung meron pa tayong sapat na kakayahan na bigyan ng atensyon yung mga magkakasakit ng malala. As of 14 March po, meron pa tayong 55% available ICU beds. Meron pa po tayong 62% isolation beds. Meron pa po tayong 71% available na mga ward beds. At meron pa po tayong 74% available na mga ventilators. Ito naman po yung numero natin sa testing. No? Mula sa isang laboratory noong March 2020, meron na tayong 229 laboratories ngayong March of 2021. Mula sa higit na 1,000 or 1,282 actual tests kada araw noong Marso 2020, ngayon ay pumapalo na po tayo sa halos 40,000 tests or 39,117 average daily testing output ngayong March 2021. Nasa mahigit 9 na milyon or 9.2 million ang total number ng ating na-test. Katumbas po ito ng 8.4% ng ating buong populasyon. Tingnan naman po natin ang ating isolation facilities. Ito po ay sinamarize natin dahil ngayon nga pong araw nito, ironically, the first day na nalaman kung positibo rin ako, it's also the first year kung kailan po tayo nag-impose ng ECQ. No? Pero tingnan po natin yung ating mga isolation facilities. No? Mula sa isang isolation facility noong March 2020 sa New Clark City, meron na tayong 10,000 isolation facility sa buong bansa as of March 2021. Mula sa higit 30,000 kama noong April 2020, ang ating mga kama sa temporary treatment and monitoring facilities or TTMFs ay nasa halos 100,000 na or 99,910 ngayong March 2021. Sa ngayon din po, kilala na natin ang COVID-19 at alam na rin natin ang ating mga alam na rin ng mga medical frontliners natin kung paano alagaan ang mga pasyenteng may ganitong sakit. Pangalawa, mas maaga nating nadidetect at ibang variants at nasusundan natin sila. Kaya nakakagawa tayo ng mas mabilis na contact tracing. Pangatlo, marami sa ating mga sumusunod sa mask. Saan man tayo magpunta sa labas, nakikita natin na maraming nakasuot ng mask at ng face shields. Isuot lang po ito ng maayos. No? Kailangan natatakpan ng ang ating ilong at baba ng face mask. At nakokomplement ito sa pagsuot ng tamang face shield na covered ang buong mukha. Pagdating naman sa paghuhugas ng kamay, gumamit tayo ng sabon at tubig at maghugas tayo ng madalas at hindi bababa ng 20 segundo ang ating mga paghuhugas. Ang kailangan nating paigtingin ay ang social distancing. Halimbawa, huwag tayong kumpul-kumpul kapag kumakain, lalo na kung hindi tayo galing sa iisang pamamahay or household. Hindi sapat po ang iwas na kailangan may tamang ventilasyon din at pag-uusap o interaksyon ay nasa minimum. Kasamang mga ito sa minimum health standards na mahigpit natin ipinatutupad sa level ng individual. Hindi sapat na malaman ang mga ito. No? Kailangan natin ituro rin ito sa iba. Educate, educate, at educate. Sa level ng mga establishments, no? Una, pagpapatupad mga sumusunod na risk mitigation strategies. Yung engineering controls nga po, yung ventilation at contact tracing. Kung meron pong mga restaurants na open air, mas mabuti pong pumunta doon sa mga open air ng mga restaurants. Pangalawa, ang pag-measure na compliance at pag-establish ng baselines. No? Sa level naman po ng mga LGUs, ang pagpapatupad ng COVID-19 Coordinated Operations to Defeat Pandemic o yung CODE sa pamamagitan na pinalakas ng mobilisasyon ng Barangay Health Emergency Response Teams. Ano ba itong CODE? Ito po yung pagpupunta ng bahay-bahay ng mga barangay health workers. No? at aktibo po silang naghahanap ng mga tao na merong simptomas. Pag nakahanap po sila ng tao na merong simptomas, diretso na po yun ng isolation at patapos po ay tinetest din po ng PCR. Pangalawa, tracing at pag-quarantine ng lahat ng close contact sa loob ng susunod na 24 oras. Sa bagay na ito, 100% ng mga kaso na may sintomas ay kailangan ma-isolate sa isang facility sa loob ng 24 oras. 100% sa mga nangangailangan ma-isolate or may quarantine na pinili ang home isolation or quarantine ay sa mga pamamahay na eligible para sa home isolation or quarantine. Pangatlo, testing ng close contacts na nagkakaroon ng sintomas gamit ang RT-PCR test. Pang-apat, ang pagsisimula ng contact tracing kahit nasa suspect cases. No? Panglima, ang pagmamonitor sa workplaces at iba pang closed settings tungkol sa kanilang case data at pagsunod sa minimum public health standards at safety protocols. At pang-anim, ang pagtitiyak na tamang handover sa LGUs ng mga returning overseas Filipinos at mga papasok na international travelers para masiguro ang pagsunod at makumpleto ang quarantine or isolation. Ang ito po ay kasama sa ating prevent, detect, isolate, test, treat strategy. Okay. Inaprubahan po ng Metro Manila Council na simula ngayong araw, 15 ng Marso hanggang sa katapusan ng Marso ngayong taon, ay magkakaroon na ng curfew mula alas 10 ng gabi hanggang alas 5 ng madaling araw. Para naman po sa mga commercial establishments, ang operating hours ay mula hanggang alas 9 ng gabi po tayo ng anunsyo kung magkakaroon ng liquor ban at kung ano pa po ang napagkasunduan ng ating mga mayors. Liban sa curfew, may ibang lungsod sa NCR ang may ginawa ng konkretong hakbang. Sa Maynila, nasa 3% ng empleyado ng Manila City Hall ang physically pinag-report. Samantala, sa Quezon City, pinatupad mula ngayong araw hanggang katapusan ng alternative work schedule, liquor ban, pagsasara ng gyms, spas at internet cafes sa loob ng 2 linggo. Dito po nagtatapos ang ating press briefing. No? Makakasama po natin ngayong araw si ADB Country Director Kelly Bird at si Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara. With your kind indulgence, Secretary Guevara, unahin ko na muna po si ADB Country Director Kelly Bird dahil ito po ay may kinalaman doon sa naaprobang pautang ng ADB para pambili po natin ng mga bakuna laban sa COVID. Mr. Kelly Bird, yes sir. Can you tell us how much was the loan facility approved by the ADB, and can you please confirm that this was the very first loan extended by the ADB in connection with government's purchase of COVID-19 vaccines? The floor is yours, Mr. Bird.
Thank you very much, Secretary Harry Roque, and good afternoon. Yes, I do confirm that Philippines is the first member country of ADB to access the Asia-Pacific vaccine facility. Our board of directors approved the loan last Thursday for $400 million. And the loan is dedicated to financing the procurement of vaccines. The vaccines that would be procured would be those that would meet one of 3 eligibility criteria. Now, if I talk about the loan features, the loan is also being co-financed with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and so they will be adding an extra $300 million. So that's a total of $700 million.
Wow.
Just some very good features of ADB loan. It allows for advance payments. It will follow ADB's procurement processes, And that means that ADB can also make direct payments to the supplier. So it provides for a very streamlined procurement process working with the government of the Philippines. We also have technical assistance that supports the loan, and that technical assistance will be there to work with the Department of Health in monitoring and surveilling the deployment of vaccines throughout the country.
Okay, so it's 700 million, and what kind of vaccines can the Philippines purchase using this loan extended by the ADB, co-financed by the AIIB? And since this was co-financed by the AIIB, does this mean that we can also buy Chinese vaccines using the 700 million loan?
Okay, so under the facility, there is 3 criteria for which vaccines can be procured. And the objective of that criteria is to ensure that the vaccines are safe and effective. The first criteria is that the vaccines should be selected for procurement under COVAX. And COVAX is a global coalition which is aimed to procure vaccines that are safe to ensure that developing member countries have equitable access to those vaccines. So that's COVAX. So if it's been selected for procurement under COVAX, then that would meet the first criteria. The second criteria is that the vaccine has been pre-qualified by the World Health Organization. And the third criteria is that the vaccine has an emergency use approval from a stringent regulatory authority listed by WHO, and that those vaccines are produced in that country. So there are the 3 criteria, and as long as the vaccines fits in under one of those criteria, it is eligible for financing under the project loan. And just give you an example, the Serum Institute of India, they are producing under license from AstraZeneca that vaccine. They call it Covishield. That brand, for example, meets our first eligibility criteria as it's been selected for procurement under that first criteria by COVAX. So the government of the Philippines is obviously discussing and negotiating with vaccine suppliers. And for those vaccines that would be procured under ADB, they would need to meet one of those criteria. A number of those vaccines are now have a pathway towards meeting one or two of those criteria.
Okay. By phone patch, no? Secretary, marami po nagtatanong ano na po ang resulta doon sa mga iba't ibang mga kaso di umano ng mga extralegal killings na naimbestigahan ng AO35 Interagency Committee, at specifically yung putukan po sa panig ng PIDEA at saka ng kapulisan at saka yung Sunday putukan po na involving activists. The floor is yours, Secretary Maynard Guevara.
Magandang tanghali, Secretary, at magandang tanghali sa mga sumusubaybay sa iyong programa ngayong oras na ito. Medyo garbled ng bahagya yung last part ng iyong talong, Seth, no? Pero I got the gist of the question. This month, ay nag-call ako ng meeting itong AO35 Committee on EJK, enforced disappearances, torture, and other grave violations of human rights. So, yung mga cases na under investigation by the AO35 Committee will be reviewed para malaman namin ang status ng ongoing investigation dyan sa mga various cases. No? Some of these cases have remained unsolved, sad to say that dahil talagang walang ebidensya na makita o walang testigo na nagka-come forward para sabihin o ipaalam sa authorities kung ano ang mga nangyari. Pero meron din ang mga certain cases na may mga leads at patuloy na iniimbestigahan ng special investigating teams na binuo ng DOJ. Ngayon, ang pinakahuli dito ay yung mga pangyayari sa Calabar Zone. Itong nakaraang, when was that? I think on February 24 or something like that. So, ang nagawa ng DOJ so far ay unang-una nagkaroon kami ng preliminary assessment kung itong incident na ito sa Calabar Zone ay magpo-fall under the jurisdiction of the AO35 Committee on EJ case, or this is something for investigation by possibly by the NBI. But based on the information that we have gathered, at least on the basis of mga reports na nakakarating sa amin, we felt na, or we assessed na this is a proper case for investigation by the AO35 Committee dahil hindi naman apparently disputed na yung mga victims dito, Harry, were members of certain cause-oriented groups, like some environmental groups or the Bagong Alyansa Makabayan, some were peasant leaders, some were members of a fishermen's group, and so forth and so on. So, at ang involved ay state forces, that's another element para mag-fall siya under the AO35 jurisdiction. So, based on that preliminary assessment, we have decided to refer these incidents to the AO35 committee. But last week, I have already created the necessary special investigating teams to be led by DOJ prosecutors and to be supported by investigators from our law enforcement agencies, para masimulan na kaagad ang investigation. So I suppose by today, they would have constituted themselves. We have provided the necessary funding for the operation of these special investigating teams. And pretty sure they'll be on their way to conduct the investigation on these incidents in the Calabar Zone area.
For you in a while, no? So, simulan na po natin ang ating open forum. Yusek Roque, please.
Hello, good afternoon, Secretary Roque, and sa ating mga bisita. Sir, Secretary, unahin ko na po itong tanong ni Laila Salaveria. Ano po,
Yes.
Kumusta daw po ang pakiramdam ninyo at kung kayo daw po ay asymptomatic? Saan daw po kayo magka-quarantine? Will he continue working remotely? Ang tanong naman po ni Ace Romero ay di po ba dapat mainam na nag-isolate muna after COVID testing bago mag-report for work? Secretary?
Results po here, no? Wait lang po, Yeah, narinig niyo po ako?
Yes, Secretary po.
Narinig niyo po ako, no?
Secretary, napuputol-putol ka.
Yes, okay. Unang-una po, dahil nga po sa dalas ng aking pagtetest, dahil required po yan pag kami ni Presidente, at these past 2 weeks po, no? I have had to go po ay negatibo, no? Siguro po I have had a total of mga
Secretary, I'm sorry
I've had a total of mga around 35 malabo.
Opo,
Malabo daw ang linya.
Naputol po kayo dun sa unang sentence ninyo na dahil sa dalas po ng pag-test nyo dahil required pagpupunta kayo kay Presidente, naputol po kayo dun.
Okay, sinasabi ko po, sa dalas po ng mga pagpupulong namin kay Presidente, I have had to undergo at least 3 PCR tests a week dahil every 48 hours po yan. No? At these past 2 weeks, talagang sa rollout nga ng vaccines, no? I had no less than 35 PCR tests po, no? Since I came back as spokesperson for a year. So talagang it came as a surprise and as a shock, no? It's not just a shock na after about 35 tests, nag-positive tayo, no? Pero sa akin po, almost routine na ito na on a Sunday afternoon, preparatory to the Monday evening meeting with the President, nagpapakuha na ng RT-PCR test. And before this nga po, nag-test tayo nung 10th of March. And before that, kompleto po yung aking test. Dahil nga po, sa vaccine rollout, sunod-sunod din. I suppose po, I followed naman po all the procedures. Itong RT-PCR test naman po for Sunday, for today, is preparatory nga po for the President, no? Pero as usual, no, ako po ay nagpunta dito sa aking opisina for the usual 12 p.m. press briefing, and the result was actually released at 10. It was released wait, nawala yung aking, but I was informed about an hour later about the result, no? And before that, I will just read all the test results that I've had, no? I had one in, so the latest was yesterday, March 14. I had one in March 10. I had one in February 28. I had one in February 26. I had one in February 23. I had one in February 18. Pero kulang pa ho ito kasi meron akong 10 days in March na ito, meron akong 3 pang mga resulta na hindi physically hawak ko, no? So sa akin po, it's become almost part of my routine, no? Na 2 to 3 times a week nagpi-PCR. And always, you know, I pray that I'm negative, and always I've been negative for the past year. Pero exactly 1 year after ECQ, nahabulan po ako ni COVID-19. Pero wala naman po ako masyadong exposure dahil I came to the office. Ang aking routine po, nag-iisa ako sa opisina, reading my briefing papers and reading all the papers. So wala po talaga ako halos contact with anyone in the office. And right now, I'm alone in my office. Kaya nga po medyo mahirap ang connectivity natin because no one is assisting me on Zoom.
Secretary,
wala po ako nararamdaman. I'm asymptomatic. I'm very much shocked and surprised na bigla ako nag-positive. But I had a confirmatory antigen test kasi dito po sa Malacanang, nag-antigen po kami ng mga bisita and it also tested positive for antigen.
Secretary, yun daw pong, saan po daw kayo mag-isolate? Kayo po ba ay pupunta sa isolation facility? Paano po? Kayo po ba ay magtutugon pa rin sa pagganap niyo sa trabaho ninyo? Kayo remotely kahit po kayo ay nasa isolation?
Well, I'm inclined to go to an isolation facility kasi ang misis ko po meron ding comorbidity, no? Although nagpapatest na po siya ngayon kasi kasama naman kami magtulog, no? Since my last test on the 10th of March, no? So if she turns out also to be positive, mag-isolate na po kami siguro magkasama. Pero if she's negative today, I intend to go to an isolation facility. Also because we need to walk the talk na as much as possible sa facility quarantine tayo, no? And since I'm asymptomatic, I think I will proceed, continue to discharge my functions. I will probably not be as effective because I will not be attending the meetings with the President and I will not be physically with the President, but I will try to follow live coverages of the President's meeting. And for the President's meeting with select members of the IATF, I will be remotely be present. I will arrange for Zoom tonight with the meeting with the President.
Secretary, naipaabot niyo na po ba ito kay Presidente, yung inyong resulta ng COVID test?
Well, hindi pa po, no? But pinakokontak ko na po ang PMS para nga to arrange for the remote attendance in the meeting later. Pero as I said po, negative po tayo for the Dumaguete trip, no? And I did not have any close contact with the President. Hindi po ako nakalapit sa kanya just from afar.
Opo. Secretary, tanong po ni Evelyn Quiroz ng Filipino Mirror. Ito po ang tanong niya. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte has proposed to do away with quarantine classifications, which, as he said, has created confusion. Why does the government keep persisting with quarantine classifications instead of just imposing a total lockdown?
Kasi nga po, Evelyn, napakahirap ng total lockdown. No? Mas marami na pong naghihirap ngayon dahil sa lockdown kesa dun sa mga nagkakasakit ng seryoso dahil po sa COVID-19. Napakahirap po talaga ng trabaho ng IATF at kaya po nakikiusap ako sa mga iba, no, na sana po maghinay-hinay sa kanilang mga deklarasyon. And I will specifically mention na po yung Octa Research. We appreciate po all your comments, pero talagang maselan po talaga yung pagbabalanse na ginagawa natin ngayon. Kaya po napakadali sana mag-recommend ng course of action, pero tayo po talaga, it's a deliberative body. It takes us hours to arrive at possible recommendations to the President dahil lahat po talaga kinoconsider. Sa ngayon po talaga, tinitignan natin yung hindi lang tumataas na kaso, tinitignan din po natin yung ating healthcare utilization, no? At magtiwala naman po ang taong bayan na talagang we are always guided by data. No? And of course, all recommendations will be as a result of a very delicate balancing act. We all want to be healthy because unless we are healthy, we cannot work. But the reality po talaga is there are now more people hungry because of total lockdowns than compared to those na nagkakasakit ng seryoso.
Opo. Question ni Evelyn Quiroz para po kay Secretary Menardo Guevara. Secretary, DOJ Administrative Order Number 35 created a task force to find out if violence was necessary when the members of the Philippine National Police and the Armed Forces of the Philippines serve search warrants in joint operations in several areas in Calabarzon. What has the task force accomplished at present?
Research, Rocky, thank you for the question. Pero yan yung sinagot ko earlier, no, Evelyn, yung tukol doon sa mga nagawa na AO35 committee regarding this incident sa Calabarzon. No? As I mentioned earlier, nakagawa na kami ng assessment dyan, na factor yan for the AO35 committee to investigate. We have created a special investigating teams last week to start the investigation of the incident in these various places. And we have provided the necessary funding for the work of these special investigating teams. We are also trying to request the assistance and support of the Commission on Human Rights. No? Kasi baka meron silang information na nag-gather na which may be useful to the work of the AO35 committee. After all, kasama rin naman sila sa AO35 committee as an observer. And we have encouraged them to take a more active participation in the work of the AO35 committee.
Secretary? Okay. Question from Evelyn Quiroz for
Yes,
for Mr. Kelly Bird. Question from Evelyn Quiroz. The Asian Development Bank recently approved a $400 million loan that will help the Philippines purchase a safe and effective vaccine against the coronavirus. Could you give us a short rundown of the terms of the loan?
Thank you very much. My video is not working, but let me give you a quick summary of the terms of the loan. It's a 10-year loan. It has a 3 years grace period before the government starts to repay back the loan. And the pricing is based on LIBOR 6 months plus a 50 basis points added to the interest rate. So the interest rate is LIBOR plus 6 months, LIBOR 6 months plus 50 basis points. The LIBOR 6 months is currently around 0.19%. So overall at the moment, the interest rate would be 0.69. They are the terms.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bird. Secretary, ang susunod pong magtatanong si Mela Lesmoras ng PTV.
Hi, good afternoon, Secretary Roque, and sa atin pong mga guests. Una sa lahat, Secretary Roque, kukumustahin ko lang po sana kayo kasi may mga kababayan tayong nag-aalala, may comorbidities din po tayo. Ano po yung pakiramdam natin ngayon? At i-reiterate ko lang, Secretary Roque, even po ba tayo nagkasakit, tuloy-tuloy pa rin po ba yung magiging briefings po natin? Secretary Roque, parang nakamute po yata tayo.
Well, gaya ng sinabi ko, Mela, thank you very much for your concern. But thank God, I am asymptomatic. Wala po akong nararamdaman. I was completely surprised and shocked by the result. At wala po akong deputy spokes. So habang wala po tayong nararamdaman, I will proceed to discharge my functions while on isolation. And as I said, I'm inclined to go into facility isolation para po to encourage others na umiwas na sa home isolation. Pero magpapatuloy din po ako ng ating press briefings at everything will be done remotely. But thank you very much for your concern. And I do hope that hindi na po lalala itong aking pakiramdam. Wala po ako ngayon sa kahit anong nararamdaman.
Opo. And Secretary Roque, given po dito nga sa nangyari, kapag po ba gumaling po kayo, God willing, ay gusto nyo na talagang magpabakuna, ano po yung mga parang take nyo ngayon about sa kahalagahan ng pagpapabakuna po?
Well, alam niyo po, nagsisisi nga ako na hindi ako nagpabakuna noong panahon na yun sa PGH. No? Kasi kung hindi po siguro naubusan at nabakunahan ako sa PGH, siguro po hindi na ako nadapuan ngayon. No? At one of my good friends, no, si Dr. Minggita Padilla, ay nakapagbakuna nga doon. And she texted me over the weekend na nagpa-test siya, meron na siyang antibodies. No? So it was really, I think, sad na hindi ako nakapagbakuna, but we also have to follow protocols na unahin muna natin ang mga medical frontliners. So ang aking pakiusap po doon sa mga medical, pero iba ho, kunin nyo na yan. Dahil gaya ko po, nagsisisi, hindi nabigyan ng bakuna noong mga panahon na yon dahil hindi qualified. Kayo naman po qualified. Nandiyan na po ang bakuna, kunin nyo na po kaysa ma-include na kayo sa datos gaya ko.
Opo. Secretary Roque, for my final question lang po, itatanong ko lang din po kasi ngayon ang anibersaryo ng community quarantine nga sa Pilipinas. May mga kababayan lang po tayo nagtatanong, magkakaroon daw po kaya ng deja vu, magkakaroon po kaya ulit ng MECQ, ECQ dahil nga sa patuloy na pagtaas po ng COVID-19 cases po sa bansa.
Napakahirap po talaga magsarado ng ekonomiya muli. Pero ang binabantayan po talaga natin, yung datos hindi lang sa pagdami ng mga kaso, kung hindi yung healthcare utilization rate natin dahil kinakailangan may sapat tayong mga kama para gamutin yung mga malalang magkakasakit. Sa akin naman po, kung daraming numero pero gaya ko na asymptomatic, ay hindi naman po dapat siguro na magsarado tayo kung sapat-sapat naman po yung ating mga kakayahan na gamutin yung mga magkakasakit ng seryoso. And I guess I can speak with authority now since now I'm part of the statistics.
Opo. Tama po, spokes, no? May public address po mamaya si Pangulong Duterte.
Meron po siyang public address. I will join remotely.
Okay. Thank you so much po, Secretary Roque, and hiling po namin yung paggaling niyo.
Ay, maraming salamat po. I appreciate it po.
Thank you, Amela. Secretary, tanong po mula kay Laila Salaveria ng Inquirer para po sa inyo and para kay Secretary Guevara. The Oriental Mindoro government said PNP Chief De Bolsinas did not undergo health screening when he visited the province because he arrived via helicopter. Is the PNP Chief going to be held accountable for this? And if so, in what way?
Sa akin po, I leave that to DILG. Kasi sila po yung merong supervision sa PNP. Perhaps si Secretary Maynard can answer also.
Thank you, sir. Yung hindi pagdaan sa health screening, Alam mo, I think yung health screening kasi ang understanding ko is a requirement of the local government unit para makapasok sa kanilang lugar, no? So for entry. So as far as General Senior's case is concerned, mooted na yun kasi in fact nakapasok na siya, no? So tama naman si Sec Roque, this is a matter for the DILG to consider. Pero para sa akin ang mas mahalaga, apart from yung siya ay hindi dumaan sa health screening, ay kung meron bang ibang violations na nagawa si General Sina nung siya ay pumunta doon sa lugar na yon, like nagkaroon ba ng mass gathering na hindi authorized, or yung proper wearing of mask and face shields and social distancing. I think those are the more important concerns. Yung kasing pagpasok doon sa lugar, nangyari na yun, wala tayong magagawa ron. It's an administrative procedure only for purposes of screening people who will enter. Pero I don't know if there is an ordinance na may penalty kung sakali man na ang isang tao ay willfully hindi dumaan sa health screening. Kaya let's leave it to the DILG as suggested by Sec Harry.
Thank you, Secretary. Secretary Roque, second question po ni Laila Salaveria. The police official who asked a Calbayo court for the list of lawyers representing groups linked to communist insurgents was relieved, and the PNP has apologized for the move. Given the fact that such a request was made in the first place, do lawyers have a reason for to fear that they are possible targets in the government's anti-insurgency campaign? Ang question po for Secretary Roque and Secretary Menardo Guevara.
Sa akin pananaw po, walang ganon dahil sinibak nga po yung humingi. Siguro po kung hindi sinibak yung humingi, dapat may dahilan ngang matakot. Pero nakita po natin na hindi naman po kinonsente ng gobyerno yan. At dahil dyan po, walang dahilan para matakot ang mga abogado.
Secretary
Maynard?
Yes, Sec Roque. It seems na isolated incident lang yun nangyari sa Calbayo City, no? And in fact, meron nang admission ang PNP authorities na rather improper yung ginawa na yon ng Chief of Police ng Calbayo City, and appropriate administrative sanctions na din-impose, no? Kaya siguro hindi naman yun something that happens everywhere else. Wala naman tayong ibang nababalitaan na mayroong ganyang klaseng incident rin anywhere else in the country. Hindi ko naman masisisi rin ang ating mga lawyers kung sila ay mag-isip na baka mamaya ay talagang binatarget sila o may profiling na ginagawa. Talagang maiisip ng ibang mga lawyers na meron ng ganon. Kaya ang pinakamabuti dyan ay talagang mag-ingat na lamang ang ating legal professionals sa kanilang mga ginagawa. They should take the necessary precautions, proper coordination with our law enforcement agencies and so forth and so on. At kung meron silang nararamdaman na in-threat to their personal security, ay report nila kaagad yun sa pinakausulat, including sa DOJ, if necessary, to the NBI. Yes, sir.
Ang third question po ni Laila Salaveria para pa rin po sa inyo ni Secretary Roque and Secretary Menardo Guevara. How does the palace address concerns that authorities are abusing the service of search warrants and harassing lawyers and groups linked with communist rebels?
Sa akin po, we have to accord our judges, no, the presumption of regularity in the discharge of their functions, no. Meron pong constitutional requirement na no search warrant shall be issued except by a judge and upon finding of probable cause, no. So sa akin po, I would like to presume na lahat po ng mga West natin ay dini-discharge po ang kanilang katungkulan at talagang on the basis of affidavits and submissions, they're convinced na meron po dahilan talaga para mag-issue ng search warrants. So let's trust our justice system naman po, at kung meron naman po talagang basehan na yung mga ibang judges ay hindi po nagdedetermine ng probable cause, meron naman pong proseso dyan, no? And to those na ang feeling nila walang probable cause, avail po natin ang ating mga remedyo. Pero sa akin po, I was raised also by a judge, so that's a declaration na bias po ako, pero nakita ko sa pag-issue ng search warrant dahil alam po nila na napaka-importante ng kalayaan at ng privacy ng ating mga tahanan. Secretary Maynard, would you like to add?
Yes, from my point of view, generally speaking, ang problema ay hindi naman talaga doon sa issuance ng search warrant, no? Kasi talagang dumadaan naman yan sa isang very tedious process na ang judge ay nagko-conduct ng searching inquiry at yun na nagiging batihan kung siya ay mag-issue ng search warrant. Ang talagang nagiging problema dyan is not in the issuance but in the implementation of the search warrant. Kasi may kuminsan may tendency na gumagamit ng unnecessary force ang mga nag-enforce or nag-serve ng search warrant. No? Kaya nahandoon ang problema. Kaya kung darating yung mga insidente na ganito na magkakaroon ng abuse sa pag-serve ng search warrant, gumagamit ng unnecessary violence and so forth and so on, all we need to do is for people affected to bring it to the attention of the authorities concerned so that the proper administrative and, if necessary, criminal sanctions can be imposed upon persons who abuse or use unnecessary violence in the process of implementing our search warrant. Yes, sir.
Secretary Guevara, salamat po. Si Trish Terada po, ang susunod na magtatanong. Trish?
Hi, good afternoon po. Good afternoon, Spoke. Sorry to hear about the results of your test.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sir, first question na lang po siguro, would it be safe to say now that there could be delays in the further reopening of the economy? Would it be wise to delay it at this point with the situation that we have?
Well, ako po, with this personal experience of mine, no, I will continue to work in isolation. Ang diferensya lang po, nakakahawa po, so I will isolate myself, but I will work in isolation. I will continue to discharge my functions. I will continue with my press briefings, with the monitoring of the President's activities. So sa akin po talaga, I hope to serve by example, no, na we need to live with this virus. No? So sa akin po talaga, hindi po ako nasa laylayan ng lipunan, pero I could imagine na yung mga no work, no pay, talagang nagdarasal po na sana makapagpatuloy sila magtrabaho dahil sa ngayon po, wala rin po tayong ayuda na nasa budget, no? Kahit anong budget. No? So magiging mahirap po talaga para sa mga nasa laylayan ng lipunan na mabuhay kung magsasarado muli ng ekonomiya.
Sir, it's been 1 year since Metro Manila was placed on lockdown. People are demanding for answers. Kanina po you provided somehow an explanation kung paano posibleng nangyayari po ito lahat. But many are asking who should be accountable for this surge? Is it the economic managers who pushed for the opening of the economy? Or is it the IAPF who's supposed to be on top of the situation, or the COVID campaign? Or is it the LGUs, the DILG, the PNP for failing to enforce the rules? Or is it government officials for failing to set an example to the public, or is it the public for failing to comply with the minimum health standards?
Alam mo, I think it's the nature of the virus to mutate. At mabuti na lang hindi siya na-mutate na mas nakakasakit siya ng seryoso. Kung hindi, mas nakakahawa siya. Jovan, can you show again the graph? Ayaw ko pong isipin na ito'y dahil sa pagbubukas ng ekonomiya. Kasi ang datos
Spokes, we can't hear you. Nawawala po yung signal.
Does not support yung dalawang graphs natin na after we reopen the economy, ito po, October 12 tayo nabukas ng ating ekonomiya, pababa pa nga po ang mga kaso. At tignan ninyo, matapos ng Christmas Day, pababa pa rin ang mga kaso. So wag po natin sisihin yung ating pagbubukas ng ekonomiya. And I guess, coming from someone now with COVID, that should make an impact. Hindi po talaga pagbubukas sa ekonomiya naging problema. I think bibigay ko rin po yung aking sample for RNA testing sa UP at tingnan po natin, no, baka nga itong mga bagong variants ang dahilan kung bakit mas nakakahawa na siya. Dahil ako naman po, strict rin po ako sa aking sarili dahil nga sa aking mga comorbidities, pero nadapuan pa rin. So I don't think anyone should be blamed. Kaya nga lang po, it's the nature of viruses to mutate. And let's just be thankful that it has mutated in a way na mas nakakahawa siya, pero hindi po mas nakakamatay.
Sir, itong number of cases, of course, it's rapidly increasing. But then, yun nga, sabi niyo po, what's important is that we look at the data and that there's sufficient healthcare capacity. But looking at the other side, sir, wouldn't the increasing number of cases paint a bad picture in the international community? For example, any concerns are about putting the Philippines in bad light na it would prompt, other countries to impose travel bans against flights coming from the Philippines. And kasi sir, sasabay ko na lang din, napansin ko rin po kasi there are some cases na lumulusot na Filipinos are actually testing positive abroad from the Philippines. And for example, in case po sa Japan, doon nalaman that and he tested positive and nag-test positive for new variant. What does that say about the quality of our testing?
Chris, unang-una, hindi lang po sa Pilipinas nagkakaroon ng increase of cases. It is worldwide. At ito pong dahilan kung bakit despite our surge sa mga kaso, number 30 pa rin po tayo sa mundo. No? Tumaas po talaga tayo in terms of active cases from 36 to 28, pero nananatili pa rin tayo na for every 1 million population, 135. At bumaba pa po ang ating case fatality rate. So the fact na hindi tayo nabago sa ranking, that means worldwide, other countries are having more cases. No? Now, and this is despite the fact na mas maraming countries ang ahead na sa vaccination. No? So I think, although I am not a scientist and I'm not in a position to conclude, we cannot discount the mutation of the virus as one of the grounds for this surge. Pero alam nyo kasi, ayaw kong palaging sinasabi na nagpapabaya ang mga Pilipino kasi kahit saan naman ako pumunta, talaga naman pong sumusunod naman yung nakikita kong karamihan ng mga Pilipino. Pero dun sa mga hindi sumusunod, nako, yan na nga po, may surge na, no? Kaya dapat, kung dati hindi kayo sumusunod, dapat siguro sumunod na ngayon dahil ayaw nating matamaan tayo, no? Dahil pag tinamaan tayo, hindi pa rin tayo sigurado na hindi tayo magkakasakit ng seryoso.
Sir, final question. Yung trips po kaya ni Pangulo or yung movement ng Pangulo, would it be restricted again? Mababawasan po ba yung mga biyahe niya considering our situation now?
Well, actually, tatanungin ko po ang PSG, no? Pero very busy po si Presidente this week. He has 2 out-of-town trips scheduled for this week. At actually, even before I found out I was positive, I was going to ask si chief ng PSG, Jess Durante, kung anong mangyayari sa schedule ng ating Pangulo. So I will still ask after this press briefing.
Thank you, Spokes. Please get well soon.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Secretary, tanong mula kay Rosalie Cos ng UNTV. Kasabay po ng naitalang 5,000 bagong kaso ng COVID-19 kahapon at isang taong anibersaryo ngayon mula nang ideklara po yung lockdown sa bansa dahil po sa pandemic. Nag-trending sa Twitter ang hashtag Duterte Palpak. Ano ang masasabi ng palasyo kaugnay nito?
Tignan po natin ang datos. Napababa po talaga natin ang kaso. At itong buwan ng Marso lang sumipa muli. At bagamat paulit-ulit po sinasabi na hindi po ako eksperto, hindi po ako dalubhasa, hindi ako scientist, hindi ako doktor, tingin ko naman yung kumpirmasyon na nasa Pilipinas na yung mga bagong variants at itong mga bagong variants na may nakakahawa, ito ay isa sa mga dahilan ng surge. Hindi po dahil palpak ang gobyerno. Dahil kung titignan niyo po ang ating case fatality rate, mababa pa rin po at nasa laylayan po tayo ng buong mundo sa mga numero na namamatay. Bagamat nakikiramay din po tayo sa mga namatayan.
Second question po niya, excellent pa rin bang maituturing ang COVID na response ng Pilipinas kung ikukumpara po sa mga kapwa nating ASEAN members states tulad po ng Thailand at Vietnam na mababa ang number ng COVID-19 cases at deaths? Kumpara daw po sa atin at bakit daw po?
Well, until sumipa po mga kaso natin, we were really doing a very good job, an excellent job. Ay napansin nyo naman talaga itong pagtaas, kailan lang po nangyari talaga ito, mga nakalipas na araw. No? At ayaw ko nga po sisihin, ayaw kong sabihin na nagpapabaya mga Pilipino, meron po talagang kinalaman itong mga bagong variants na lumalabas. Kaya nga po siguro ang leksyon para sa lahat at ito na rin po isang dahilan kung bakit nagpapatuloy tayo ng ating broadcast despite testing positive is to tell people na talagang mas nakakahawa na ngayon itong COVID, mas dapat magpainting ng mask, hugas, iwas, at doon sa mga medical frontliners natin na po pwede na magpabakuna, naku po magpabakuna na kayo dahil ako nung araw na yun sa PGH, gustong-gusto ko na, hindi naman po pwede. Siguro po kung naturukan ako, hindi po ako positibo ngayon.
Ang third question po ni Rosalie Cos, kaugnay naman po daw sa vaccination program ng pamahalaan, may vaccine tracker bang ginagamit ang gobyerno o may pinag-aaralang panukalang vaccine tracker? Paano mabibilis na matitrace daw po ng gobyerno kung on track ang vaccination program?
Ilulunsad po natin ang vaccine tracker this week. Ang halas na advice po sa akin this Wednesday, baka malunsad po yung ating
Secretary, napuputol po kayo, Secretary?
tracker. Importante po talaga. Ang sinabi ko po sa Wednesday, ilulunsad na po yung ating vaccine tracker. So antayin po natin, it will be launched this week.
Okay, ang susunod po magtatanong, Secretary, si Melo Acuña ng Asia Pacific Daily.
Hi, Melo.
Good afternoon, Secretary. Yeah, get well soon so we can have lunch one of these days. Please get well soon.
Virtual lunch. We can have a virtual lunch.
I just have some questions for... Of course, of course. May I ask Mr. Kelly Bird of Asian Development Bank just two questions. Ms. Kelly Bird, good afternoon. Mr. Bird.
Good afternoon.
I hope you're
Good
still
afternoon.
in. Yes, nice to see you, Mr. Bird. With the surge in COVID-19 cases in the Philippines and views that the Philippine economy has taken a beating from the pandemic, would you think our government, without the assistance of finance or fund social amelioration programs for the people who are most vulnerable? Mr. Bird?
Sorry, Mello, you were a little choppy there. Could you repeat your question, please?
Yes. Okay. With the surge in COVID-19 cases and with the beating our economy has taken from the pandemic, would we be able to sustain social amelioration programs without ADB and World Bank and AIIB support?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, if we look at ADB's support to the Philippines, last year, you know, our support has been sort of categorized into support for immediate relief, rebuilding the damage that was done, plus supporting the recovery. So last year we provided $10 million. And that helped to provide food support to 160,000 families in Manila during the lockdown last year. We also provided a $3 million grant to establish a laboratory at J.B. Lingard Memorial Hospital. And we also just most recently provided a $2 million grant to support the Department of Education with their last mile schools, you know, providing equipment to poor children in remote areas for their distance learning. We also provided quite significant assistance to support, for budget support, supporting the government's fiscal response. We had a $1.5 billion loan, and we were able to use that to leverage $1.2 billion that I have there. So this year we're providing an additional $400 million for the vaccine project. So we're now moving from that relief stage of last year, and we are moving into that rebuild stage. We have the Hill 1 project that was approved last year that provided $125 million for medical supplies, equipment, and renovations to isolation wards. We're now into that vaccine stage where we're supporting the government with their vaccine procurements. That's a $400 million project. But this year we also have a robust lending program with the Philippines government. We're looking at around $3 billion. Some of it is supporting our infrastructure projects, so that can be a good stimulus for economic recovery. And we're also providing some of our policy-based lending, which is budget support as well. So we still continue to have a very firm, robust lending pipeline with the government of the Philippines this year and next year. So we are here and remain committed to supporting the Philippines get through this pandemic. Just to, a last point is that, the pandemic carries with it a lot of unknowns, how it, particularly on the economy and on the social sector. And that's why ADB remains fully committed to supporting the Philippines get through this pandemic. And just to reiterate, we had a very robust lending program last year, and we continue that this year and for next year, supporting rebuilding the economy and social sector, and of course, supporting the economic recovery.
Yeah, pardon my bias, Mr. Kelly Bird. I work for Asia Pacific Daily. I'm just interested in finding out if there would be co-financing projects with AIIB, aside from the $400 million deal that you approved with the Philippines. Are there still co-financing projects or programs in the pipeline?
Okay, well, last year, AIB also co-financed our fiscal response program loan. So we provided $1.5 billion. AIIB provided $700 million, and the government of Japan provided $500. So they are co-financing the vaccine projects. In terms of future co-financing with AIIB, that is always discussed with the Department of Finance through our country operating business plan. So those discussions are still ongoing in terms of ADB co-financing with AIB on infrastructure projects, like we do with other development partners. And in this way, ADB plays an important role in leveraging financing from our other multi-development banks and also our bilateral development partners.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. Looking forward to seeing you one of these days. For Secretary Guevara and Secretary Harry Roque, I came across a memorandum, and there has been no denial from the DILG, which says that the DILG should look into organizations such as Alliance of Concerned Teachers in private and public schools of DepEd and Confederation for Unity, Recognition, and Advancement of Government Employees or Courage in Government Offices. The letter or memorandum was allegedly signed by Assistant Secretary Alexander Macario, advising their staff, their officers, to initiate an investigation on the matter and validate employees who are definite members of such organizations. What do you make of this, Secretary Harry and Secretary Guevara, please?
I have no personal knowledge, Melo, no, kung ano yung letter na yan. I cannot comment, no. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. I will send you a copy because I got hold of a copy. I'll send you a copy for your reference.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Well, for Secretary Guevara, please. Secretary Guevara.
Same answer, no? Same answer. I have no personal knowledge also. I also have no personal knowledge about that internal memo of the DILG. So it will be improper for me to comment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Secretary, let me just ask you this. What problems have you encountered in the performance of your duty to investigate what has been mentioned in Administrative Order number 35? Have you received the cooperation and assist from the other government agencies which are expected to be of help? Secretary Guevara, please.
Yes, definitely, Nelo. Yung mga ina-expect namin na assistance and support from the other member agencies of the Interagency Committee, no, on EJ case ay nakukuha naman ng DOJ. In the past, medyo may konti lang siguro lack of collaboration with CHR. Dahil, merong parang sort of reluctance din on the part of each side to share information, no, in the past. But we have overcome, I think, that obstacle, and both our side and the CHR have agreed to cooperate more closely in the investigation of incidents allegedly committed in violation of civil and political rights, no, or human rights in general. But insofar as the other members of the Interagency Committee are concerned, like the NBI, the AFP, the PNP, the DILG, the DND, and so forth and so on, we have gotten the necessary support and cooperation from them. They have always been attending our meetings. But really, the problem is when we get the necessary information or evidence on the ground. Marami dito sa mga kasong ito, presumably, were planned so carefully at yung mga witnesses in some of these incidents ay parang nag-express ng hesitancy or reluctance to come out, come forward, and provide us with the necessary information. Yun ang sinasabi ko eh. Yung mechanism itself is there. Ginagawa naman ang pwedeng gawin, no? Hanapin ang mga possible na witnesses, mag-gathering ng necessary information doon sa pinangyarihan ng incident, and so on and so on. But until and unless people who had personal knowledge about the incident would come forward and give us first-hand information, it's really difficult. So yun ang kailangan itong AO35 committee. Not the support of its member agencies, because we get them anyway. It's the cooperation of the people, of the witnesses, yung mga may personal knowledge dito sa mga incidents na ito. Yun ang kailangan ng Interagency Committee. If they come forward and let us know what they know, what they have seen, mas madali ang magiging solution dito sa mga cases na ito. That's
Yeah. Thank you very much, Secretary. Thank you. Yeah. Secretary Harry, get well soon and see you soon. Thank you.
Salamat po. Maraming salamat, Melo. Next question, please.
Secretary, ang susunod na tanong po ay mula kay Rose Tobenario of Hataw for Secretary Guevara. Ano daw po ang status ng NBI probe sa umano'y multi-billion pesos investment scam ng DV Bower Farm ni Dexter Villamin? Ano daw po ang order ng DOJ sa mga piskal sa mga kaso sa korte laban kay Villamin, considering na umano'y ipinagyayabang niya ang umano'y malawak na impluwensya niya sa DOJ, DA, DOST, AFP, PMP, Congress at maging sa media. Ano daw po ang maitutulong ng DOJ upang mabigyan ng hustisya ang mga umano'y biktima ni Villamin, lalo na ang OFWs?
Thank you, Rose. Rose, I don't even know who this Villamin is. No? So I wonder kung ano yung sinasabi niya na meron siyang influence over DOJ prosecutors or investigators. No? In any event, itong alleged scam, I don't know if it was really a scam, no? But apparently parang ang allegation ay Ponzi type of scheme ito, no? Involving this firm known as DV Bower Farm Incorporated or something like that. Ang alam ko dyan ay matagal lang na-investigahan niya ng NBI. At ang NBI ay nakapag-file na ng appropriate complaint for syndicated estafa and or I think violation ng Securities Regulation Code. At yung mga complaints na yan have been lodged with various field offices ng National Prosecution Service na nasa iba-ibang prosecutors offices na yan. Siguro baka ang kailangan gawin dito, no? Apart from telling the prosecutors to expedite the resolution of their investigation, I will have to take a look at the necessity or the need to consolidate itong investigation, itong preliminary investigation being conducted by the field offices na ma-consolidate in the DOJ proper to avoid the possibility of conflicting resolutions ng various OCCs. I have not discussed this with the Prosecutor General, but since you raised the point, I will probably consider the idea of requesting or suggesting to the Prosecutor General that all of these preliminary investigations happening in various offices in Metro Manila or elsewhere be consolidated with the DOJ proper.
Thank you, Secretary. Opo, thank you, Secretary.
If I may add, Secretary, yung aking pinsan buo naging biktima rin dyan. Sana po talaga mapabilisan yung pag-iimbestiga dyan.
Opo. Secretary, ang susunod pong tanong mula kay Chris Jose of Tremate. Reaction po sa peking driver's license na may mukha ni President Duterte na nakumpiska sa Los Angeles.
Well, mabuti na lang po sikat si Presidente sa LA at napansin nung nakakita ng ID na yun po ay picture nga ng ating Presidente. Ingat po, ingat.
Opo. Ang susunod po niyan tanong, komento daw po sa naging pagpuna ni Senator Ping Lacson sa mabagal na vaccination program ng gobyerno kontra COVID-19. Ayon sa Senador, baka abutin pa na hanggang 2033 bago natin maabot ang herd immunity laban sa sakit kung hindi magbabago ang aksyon ng Department of Health.
Well, sa akin po, pwede siguro talagang pabilisan pa. No? Pero let me explain na limitado naman po ang bakuna natin ngayon. At ang ating binabakunahan ngayon po ay ating mga medical frontliners. No? Nagkaroon nga po kasi ng EUA, yung Sinovac, na not recommended for health workers, kaya binigyan natin ng opsyon ang mga health workers. Isa po yan sa dahilan kung bakit medyo mabagal talaga ang rollout, kasi yung mga umayaw ng Sinovac, kinakailangan balikan at i-offer uli ng AstraZeneca. Pero pag dumami na po ang supply natin at binuhos na po natin yan, na dinistribute na natin yan sa pamamagitan ng lokal na pamahalaan, at wala na pong pilian, mas mapapabilisan po talaga yung proseso.
Opo. Ang susunod po magtatanong si Pia Ranyada ng Rappler.
Go ahead, Pia.
Hello, Sec. Sec, could I go to
Yes.
Secretary Guevara first?
Yes, please.
Okay, Secretary Guevara, these two questions are from our Justice reporter, Lian Buan. The first question is, our independent data culled from official data from DOJ and the Supreme Court and recently flags data shows that from Marcos to Aquino, there were 49 lawyers, judges, and prosecutors killed. That's 49 killings in 44 years compared to 61 in just 5 years under President Duterte. Sir, what can you say about this? Because people are saying that it's because the President has created an atmosphere of violence and impunity.
This is Rocky. Medyo garbled yung last part ng question niya. Would you kindly paraphrase the question for me if you don't mind? Do you check?
All right.
Is it a question about
Secretary, because the data showed that in the 5 years that the President has been in power, 61 lawyers, judges, and prosecutors were killed. And this is a big number compared to 49 killings over 44 years from the Marcos time to Aquino. So can we just get your reaction to these big figures?
Alam mo, yung trabaho ng mga lawyers, alam naman nila yan from the beginning that their profession is fraught with danger, no? So, I am not in a position to say siya na may kinalaman kung sino ang presidente, no? Doon sa number ng mga namamatay na abogado o piskal o judges, no? Kasi in the exercise of their profession, many lawyers, no, are representing clients even before who are involved in very controversial cases. May mga drug cases, may anti-terrorism, may mga terrorism cases, corruption cases, election cases. So, yung mga ganong klaseng, yung nature ng mga cases na hinahawakan nila really exposes lawyers to some personal risk or safety, you know, or issues of security. Nangyayari talaga yan. And apart from mga other causes na common also to other professionals, maaaring ang reason for the violence committed against them ay personal, maaaring business-related, maaaring political, and so forth and so on. Kaya, or maybe may mga certain advocacy sila, no, na personal or, you know, pinaprosecute or pinapursue very actively. So, maraming possible causes kung bakit nagkakaroon ng death among members of the legal profession. So parang it's so difficult for me to relate yung number of deaths and make a comparison. Depende kung sino ang presidente ng Pilipinas. Well, the president himself is a lawyer. Do you think he will have a policy na parang, will be something that will put his fellow members of the legal profession in personal jeopardy or something to that effect? I don't think so. Nangyayari yan because of circumstances prevailing and not because of whoever is the head of the present administration.
In a related topic, no, because the DOJ began dialogues on lawyer killings just in January this year, but in 2020, 2 lawyers from the DOJ family died, and these killings also began to be more pronounced November and onward. So, sir, why only do these dialogues in January of this year?
Dialogues, you referring to dialogues with the IDP? I'm sorry,
yes, sir, yung lawyer killings, about lawyer killings.
I'm sorry, medyo garbled kasi yung dating ng yung signal. So dialogues with whom?
Your dialogue on lawyer killings.
Well, it's better late than never. Better late than never, no? This is something that is being done informally naman all the time na napag-uusapan yan. At kung merong mga members of the legal profession who become victims of these violent crimes, ay iniimbestigahan din naman yan kaagad, like any other victim of common crime. So, hindi naman talaga, kaya lang talaga nagkaroon ng formal dialogue dahil nga sa nagkaroon ng recent spate of killings involving members of the legal profession. So, whether nagkataon lang yon or not, we're not really sure kung nagkataon lang. But the point is, something is being done about it. At kung magkaroon ng formal dialogue, so be it. Wala namang mawawala kung magkaroon na tayo ng dialogue with them para magkatulungan. So, who knows kung in the future, mas marami pang mangyayari na ganyan. Can we say that the dialogues were belated? No. We don't know what will happen in the future. All of these risks are happening every day. So, we don't know what's in store for the future. Kaya nga kailangan, ngayon pa lang, ay gawin na ang pupwedeng gawin to minimize incidents like this. No? Hindi lang naman members of the legal profession ang nagiging victims of crimes. Marami pa, ordinary people, other professionals, and so forth and so on. Yusek?
All right. Thank you, Secretary Guevara. Could I go to Spokesman Roque?
Go ahead, Pia.
Right, sir. Why have we not heard President Duterte comment on the Calabarzon killings to express sadness or concern on this matter, given that the DOJ already said it merits investigation? It's been a week already since the killings.
Because he's awaiting results of the investigation. You cannot comment on something not knowing what actually transpired factually.
But sir, diba he would issue comments right away during the PDEA-PNP shootout, other killings between military and NPA, palagi siyang may quick response, angry response right after. How come he is so cautious when it comes to killings like these of activists?
Let me correct you on the PDEA-PNP shootout. He was quiet, except for the fact that he said that the NBI will take over the investigation to ensure partiality of investigation. So until now, he has not commented on the case. Even when there was a shootout in Sulu between soldiers and policemen, he also did not say anything other than he assured the victims that justice will be done.
But we don't even have that from him for this controversy. Assurance
because we
from
are
his
awaiting
mouth.
for investigation. Yeah, because we are awaiting for investigation. That's the answer.
How can the palace convince Filipinos and the international community that the president is not quietly supportive, in fact, of such brutality? Because we've already traced many of his remarks. Like in 2017, he said that he would arrest legal fronts of communist groups for conspiracy. And then we have Brigadier General Felipe Natividad saying that the president's EO-70 is the reason why they conducted those raids in the first place.
Because he has told the police that he will stand by them if they are in compliance and in the discharge of their official duties, meaning that the use of force is because there is a threat on their lives. Sinabihan na po niya ang pagbanta sa kanilang mga buhay. Pero kung wala pong banta sa buhay nila, gumamit sila ng dahas, sila po ay malilitis at mapaparusahan. Nag-on the record na po si Presidente tungkol dito, not once, not twice, but at least thrice.
Okay, last question, sir. Can we have an assurance from Malacanang that the President will ask the PNP or will at least support the PNP and AFP in being fully participative and cooperative in the probes about the Calabarzon killings?
I think that the department, the Secretary of Justice is here to make that assurance. Perhaps Secretary Guevara, you can make that assurance to Pia Ranada.
Secretary, I didn't get the last part. Assurance that it is the investigation of
there will be impartial investigation on the Calabarzon incidents.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I assure the people that there will be an impartial, fair, and thorough investigation of these incidents that happened recently in the Calabarzon area.
And that the police and soldiers will fully participate and cooperate in the probes. That's the question, actually.
If they will cooperate?
Yes, sir. In all the data, all of the aspects of the service of search warrant.
Well, we will be using the necessary legal processes like issuing subpoenas for them to appear and to make their statements and to present necessary documents as may be required for the investigation. We have the necessary legal processes here to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you, folks. Hope you get better soon.
Thank you very much. Okay, Yusek Roque, marami pa bang question because the time is 1:35 and I need to go into isolation now. Marami pa bang question?
Maraming mga tanong pero marami pang tanong dito, Secretary Roque. Pero si Joseph Morong na lang po muna natin ang bigyan daan ngayon.
Go ahead, please, Joseph.
Okay, hold on, sir. Okay, sir, sorry to hear about your results. So,
Thank you.
When was the last time that you interacted with the president?
Dumaguete.
March
11th. 11th, and I had RT-PCR on the 10th, negative.
Negative ka nun. And tapos, sir, so ibig sabihin, you were not a courier during that time, no? I mean, hindi mo na-expose si Presidente.
And I did not have any close contact with them. Hindi po ako lumapit sa kanya. Kasi hindi ako lumalapit kapag maraming tao. No? Maraming tao po noon dahil inauguration ng renovated airport at saka noong port sa Dumaguete.
Sir, pasensya na ha, but nagbungkal ako ng mga litrato na binigay ng palasyo ng event. And if I can share the video and the picture. Sir, medyo malapit tayo kay PRD nito.
Ay, pero nasa likod po niya ako, no? And then wearing face shield and face mask. And I tested negative the day before.
Okay, so sir, itong interaction na to safe. You did not put the, well, to put it bluntly, put the president in danger?
I don't think so kasi talagang yung close contact is very close, no? Yung mga bulong-bulong. I know that bulong-bulong kasi sometimes I need to bulong to him dahil nga hindi kami nakakapag-usap ng madalas. But consciously, hindi po ako bumubulong kapag maraming tao.
Okay. Sir, no need for the president to be isolated or to be tested because of your results?
I don't think so because I have no close contact with him and I was tested negative the day before. In fact, hours before the event. Kasi I try to be tested as close to the event as possible.
Yes.
So the event was ang aking pagkuha ng sample was 5:50 of the night before. So 5:50 of the night.
24 hours. So
yes.
Basta safe si PRD nung 11, sir, no? And that's the last interaction?
That's the last interaction I had.
How about the cordon sanitaire, yung mga cabinet secretaries that are very close to the president who might have, interacted with him after you?
Wala naman po.
Sila Senator Bongo?
Wala. Hindi rin naman ako nakipag-close interaction with anyone kasi pag public event, hindi naman ako bumubulong-bulong. No? I try to keep my distance also.
Okay. Sir, sa ano lang, kasi over the weekend, no, marami yung mga medyo umuugong-ugong na natatakot sila na mag-ECQ. Just for the record, If it were a yes or no question, mag-ECQ po ba tayo?
Sa buwan ng Marso, possibly hindi pa po. No? Dahil gaya ng aking binalita ngayon, meron pa tayong 55% available ICU beds at meron pa tayong around 60% available COVID beds, no, ward beds. At saka 60% pa rin ng ating mga isolation facilities.
How about April, sir?
Hindi po natin alam. Kasi kung hindi po natin mapapababa yung R0 na 1.9, ibig sabihin po nun, ang isang tao na may COVID ay makakahawa ng at least 2. Yun po yung ibig sabihin ng R0. No? So, mabilis po yun. No? So, we do not know what will happen in April, kaya nga po, binabantayan natin. Pero ang mabuting balita nga po, no? Unang-una, mas alam na natin kung paano bigyan ng medical attention ang mga nagkakasakit ng seryoso. No? Alam na natin na ang nasal flow cannula ay nakakasalba ng buhay at alam na natin kung ano yung mga gamot na nakakasalba ng buhay para sa mga magkakasakit ng masigurado. At gaya ng aking binasa, no, talagang napakadami na nating mga additional COVID beds, no, para sa mga seryosong magkakasakit.
Okay. Sir, last na lang sa vaccine supply natin. Ang sabi dun sa statement ni Sec Charlie is 90% deployed na yung 1.1 ba yan na AstraZeneca and Sinovac. When is the next delivery?
Kakaroon tayo ng at least 1 million na Sinovac, tapos meron pa tayo 400,000 na donated din ng Sinovac. That's within the month of March.
March, sir. May dadating tayo sa March.
March. May darating pa po na Sinovac. 1 million na binili at saka yung 400 na additional donation.
Additional. So we will not have a situation, sir, na we are facing a surge in cases but we don't have vaccines. Hindi naman ganon.
Hindi po. At pagdating po ng Abril, dyan na talaga darating yung bulto ng ating mga in-order, kasama na po yung mga Novavax at yung iba pang ating in-order na scheduled for arrival. Isa pa nga pala po, no? Natapos na rin yung pagsusumite ng lahat ng dokumento ng Sputnik 5. No? So inaasahan po natin anytime now na ang Sputnik 5 ay baka mabigyan na rin po ng EUA.
Sir, would you be able to tell us now yung result ng India trip ni Secretary Galvez or that will have to wait for the President's meeting tonight?
Ang tingin ko gusto po ni Secretary Galvez, ang report niya will be directly to the President, which we will witness also in the Talk to the People. I will be there virtually.
But can you say now it's been a success even without divulging the pictures and in the numbers?
I think it is a success.
Okay, sir. Ingat po kayo. Magpagaling po kayo, sir. Thank you.
Maraming salamat. Ingat din kayo.
Opo, Secretary Roque, advice niyo po ako, pwede po bang magtanong pa or kailangan niyo na po magpahinga?
Go ahead. Since nandito naman tayo, go ahead.
Sa tanong po ni Samed Denilla, para po kay Secretary Guevara, na-complete na po kaya ang new version ng concession agreement ng government to Maynilad and Manila Water Company? If yes, kailan po kaya ito ipipresent for the said company for their consideration?
Yes, Mr. Roque, we had our last meeting, yung Water Concession Agreement Review Committee about 3 weeks ago. And we already ironed out yung mga remaining major issues during that meeting. We'll be having another meeting this coming Wednesday. So I suppose that kung meron lang natira pa ng any minor point, ay mapaplan pa na yun during this meeting on Wednesday. And after that, we shall be ready to sign a new water concession agreement with Manila Water. And after that, susunod na namin yung discussions with the other concessionaire, Maynilad. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Guevara. For Secretary Roque, tanong mula kay Lanes Capante of GMA News, when will the country be able to vaccinate 250,000 to 300,000 individuals per day against COVID-19, which is the required number to meet the 50 million people target within 2021? Are there... Go ahead, sir.
Inaasahan po natin na darating ng second and third quarter yung bulto ng ating orders. So pag dumating na po yung talagang marami ang ating mga bakuna, kaya po natin yan 250,000 hanggang 300,000 a day.
Second question niya, is the government's failure to secure COVID-19 vaccine supply at an earlier date also a factor as to why COVID-19 cases are increasing?
Hindi po, tingin ko talaga, again, no, hindi po ako nagsasabi na ito na talaga ang dahilan, pero dahil kumpirmado naman itong mga new variant at alam na po natin kung paano sila, anong anyo nitong bagong variant, may kinalaman po siguro yung new variant na yan without saying na ito lang talaga ang dahilan. Pero patuloy po ang pakiusap natin, mask, hugas, iwas, at dun sa po pwede na magpabakuna, naku po, wag na po kayo magantay na mahawa pa, magpabakuna po kayo.
Tanong po ni Pia Gutierrez ng ABS-CBN, the President said that he plans to relax quarantine restrictions once the country already has an ample supply of COVID vaccines. Will he reconsider in light of the recent surge of COVID-19 cases and the presence of different COVID variants in the country?
Yun nga pong sinasabi ko, napaka-delicate nitong pagbabalanse. No? At hayaan po natin munang dumating ang mga bakuna, hayaan natin mabigayan sa ating mga health workers, sa ating mga seniors. At kapag nabakunahan po natin ang health workers at seniors, kaya naman po ng ating kababayan na mabuhay na naririyan ng COVID. Talaga nga lang po matindi yung exposure ng mga health workers at matindi po talaga ang tama ng COVID sa mga matatanda at merong comorbidity. So yun po talaga ang dapat natin bantayan. So nakikiusap nga pala po ako ang aking karanasan, nako nung linggo no, na madami ako nakitang mga seniors na nasa labas, kayo po kapag kayo tinamaan ng COVID, hindi po gaya naming mga mas bata, mas matindi po epekto ng COVID. At ngayon pong parang mas nakakahawa itong mga bagong strain, nako pakiusap po sa mga seniors, manatili po sa inyong mga tahanan.
Opo. Tanong ni John Punsalan ng ABS-CBN, with coronavirus cases surging and protocols being tightened, at least 2 senators lament that we seem to be back to square one. Do you agree with this statement? Why or why not?
Hindi po, dahil bago naman sumipa ang mga COVID cases this March 19, itong buwan ng March, talaga naman po napapababa natin ang mga numero. And worldwide, talagang sumisipa po ang mga numero, kaya hindi pa rin tayo umaalis sa posisyon natin na number 30. Ang dahilan po dyan is talagang buong mundo are experiencing this kind of increase in numbers.
Opo. Ang second question niya, as the Philippine COVID-19 quarantine enters its first year, what does the government think was its biggest mistake in crisis management and how could we do better?
Ulitin ko po, no, we could do better in contact tracing. Kaya nga po ngayon, uupo ako at isusulat ko lahat ng aking mga tatawagan. Ako na magko-contact tracing sa lahat ng naging contacts ko. No? At in this connection, siguro, USEC, no? Sasabihin ko na yung mga resulta ko para, kasi we have to trace back 14 days. No? So, itong test where I tested positive was 14. Result came out today, 15. Ang last test ko was 10. Result came out also on the 10th, negative. Before that, 6. Ang nilabas ng resulta ay 7, negative. At saka 2 of March, 3 ang lumabas, negative. Pero before that, meron pa rin akong test na actually for February, ito yung marami talagang test sa February. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tests for February. But the last one in February was February 28, negative. And then February 26 was negative. No? So talagang ang mga nakasalimuha ko lang after the 10th. The 10th and onwards, yung mga nakasalimuha ko for these past 4 days, ang isa-isa ko pong ililista at tatawagan para sabihin mag-isolate sila. At magpa-test kung merong symptoms.
Opo. Tanong naman po ni Tuesday New, sa harap nga daw po ng patuloy na paglobo ng kaso ng COVID, posible po bang magkaroon ng pagpigil daw sa mga biyahe ngayong papalapit na ang Semana Santa dahil inaasahan dadagsana ang mga tao mag-uuwian sa iba't ibang probinsya?
Hindi ko po masasagot yan dahil yan ang magiging desisyon ng IATF at sa political body.
Opo, ang susunod pong tanong ni Tuesday New ay kung ano daw po, sandali lang po Secretary, kung ano daw po ang natutunan ninyo, aral, ito po, kung may natutunan kayo sa pangyayaring ito sa inyo na nag-positive kayo sa COVID kahit palagi ang pagsunod nyo sa minimum health protocols at laging pagpapa-PCR test, at ano daw po itong aral na ito?
Well, ang aral po ay kahit anong ingat nyo, po pwede kayong mahawa ngayon. Although, in fairness, no, kasi nag-launch po tayo ng mga bakuna at ilang beses ako nagpunta ng hospital. Nagpunta po ako ng PGH, nagpunta ako ng Vicente Soto, nagpunta ako ng Lawag Memorial, nagpunta ako ng Roque Ablan Hospital. So, yun po yung outside of the ordinary na ginagawa ko nung nakalipas na taon. No? So, well, pero ang aking leksyon na sana matutunan ng iba, kahit gaano po tayong kaingat, pwede pa rin tayong dapuan, kaya dapat lagi pa tayong maging mas maingat pa.
Opo. Secretary Roque, yung pong ibang mga tanong ay ipapadala ko po kay Asa Queenie or sa inyo para po bigyan nyo na lang po ng tugon through Viber or through text. Ako po ay umaasa sa mabilis nyong paggaling, Secretary. Maraming salamat po.
Well, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat, Mr. Bird. Thank you, Mr. Bird. And thank you, Secretary Maynard Guevara. Thank you, Yusek Roque. And thank you to the men and women of the Malacanang Press Corps. Mga kababayan, tatanggalin ko naman po ito dahil nag-iisa naman ako dito. No? Hindi po tayo susuko. Okay? Hindi po tayo susuko. Walang sukuan. Tinamaan po tayo ng COVID. Wala naman po tayong sintomas. Mag-isolate tayo para wag makihawa. Pero tuloy po tayo sa ating hanap buhay. Dahil ganyan po talaga ang dapat mangyari. No? Tuloy-tuloy ang buhay maski narariyan si COVID. Pero ang pakiusap ko po ay yung mga healthliners na po pwede na magbabakuna. Nako, kung ako po ay po pwede na magpabakuna, hindi po ako positibo ngayon, ang pakiusap, sige na po, magpabakuna na kayo dahil maraming gaya ko na hindi pa po pwede at sana ay nagdanais na nabakunahan na rin. So mga kaibigan, hindi po tayo mawawala. Lalaban po tayo, magpapatuloy po tayo na ating trabaho at bukas makikita-kita tayo on Zoom. At ako po siguro ay papasok sa isang institutional quarantine facility. Hanggang bukas, mga kaibigan, pangako yan, di tayo mawawala. Stay safe po. Ito pa rin ang inyong Spokes Harry Roque. Thank you po sa inyong mga panalangin and I will be here tomorrow. Bye-bye po.
Thank you, Secretary. Stay safe.
Matinding kalaban ng COVID.
Ayokong makahawa.
At mahawa.
Pero kailangan ko na magtrabaho.
Kaya di ako magiging pabaya.
Di matigas ang aking ulo.
Iingatan ko ang aking sarili.
Para maingatan ang pamilya ko.
Ito ang ambag ko.
Ako.
Ikaw.
Lahat tayo.
Sama-sama nating
Maiaangat ang bayan.
Basta't sama-sama tayo.
Sa pag-ingat buhay.
Para sa ating hanap buhay.
Mask, hugas, iwas.